The play on the field, the courts, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and promoters who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Bill Robertson. Welcome to Behind the Game. I'm Patrick Klinger. Joining me, he's leaner, he's meaner, he's prettier. He's the commissioner of the WCHA. He's Bill Robertson. Hey, Billy Rob, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Patrick. Hope you are as well, my friend.
Good to see you.
Well, we have a very special show today for our audience. Our special guest on Behind the Game is Bryan Harper, who's in his 17th year with the Minnesota Vikings and 20th in the National Football League. Bryan leads the award-winning Viking Entertainment Network, a very talented team that's responsible for content strategy and production, digital and social media, and game presentation for the National Football League club. Bryan, welcome to Behind the Game.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you guys.
Good to see you. I know you've had a busy stretch with the end of the NFL season and the Super Bowl and all that, and we'll get into a lot of topics for you in regards to your career. But I think I'm going to start out with the questions, and then we'll rotate between Patrick and myself. Tell our audience a little bit about what your position as Vice President of Content and Production of the Minnesota Vikings really entails.
Yeah, sure. Well, really, it's about it's being an advocate for the talented team of folks we have that are responsible for those areas that you mentioned earlier: digital and social media, game presentation, TV, radio. Really anything from a content perspective. So it's a fun job. Like, we get to do a lot of the storytelling and try to connect our fan base and give them the behind the scenes look that, it's kind of our competitive advantage. That's what we can provide for our fans and share those opportunities, of our players and the story of the team and so forth. And so that team of people that I have the fortune of leading is extremely talented. So that's what I do each day. Is I'm just there. I work for them. Whatever they need, I'm going to do what I can to help them be able to flourish.
Bryan, you and I have been friends for a long time, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Everybody who's in sports generally has some pretty interesting journey to get to the position that they've reached. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you landed with the Minnesota Vikings?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it kind of starts with relationships. Like you said, everybody's going to have a story. This could be a really long answer, but I'll save you all the details. But basically, when I was in school back then, a long time ago, didn't really have too many schools that had sports management degrees back then. So kind of had to manufacture my own as a comms major with, also working on the business side. Volunteered in the athletic department. I went to University of Southern Indiana in Evansville, Indiana, which is where I'm from originally. They're Division II school athletically, mostly known for basketball. And at that point in time, Bruce Pearl, who's the head coach at Auburn, was the head coach there. We won a national championship while I was there. And, he was an unbelievable mentor, so to speak, and really got me excited about, hey, I'm not going to enjoy doing anything as much as working in the world of sports. And so really took that passion and tried to figure out my entry point in, which was actually sales. So I got in the business selling. And that was, 25 years ago. Worked in Major League Soccer with the Columbus Crew, then went to the Pittsburgh Pirates, then went to the Jacksonville Jaguars for 3 seasons, and then spent one season with NASCAR before coming to Minnesota. And along the way, it was the relationships that propelled me to the next stops and so forth, and helped me see that, okay, this next step is going to be the right step to take. And then, once I got here, it just felt like home. It just felt like a great fit and a great brand, a great fan base, legacy franchise. And I've just enjoyed every day since I've been here. I've never felt like I got up in the morning and had to go to work, which I think is a true blessing.
Well, one of the things you touched on, Brian, that Patrick and I talk about a lot, and I'm sure you do too with your team, is the fact that you need mentors in your life, and you also need to build relationships. And when I talk to young people about getting into the business, I talk about being a relationship builder. It's not about emails and text messages. It's about building those relationships, as you know, and you've done it extremely well at the Minnesota Vikings. But talking to that point, tell us a little bit about your approach to being a part of the Vikings leadership team, and who is on that and how that all works.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've been on the leadership team now for, I guess, coming up on 6 years. It's been an unbelievable experience to kind of broaden the perspective of all the different areas of business that impact things instead of being narrowcasted into just like what the content world offers and so forth. So, like, I guess we all have our roles and how we, participate and show up in that regard. For me, it goes back to the same thing. I mean, to have a culture, you got to have the right people. You got to represent them the right way and provide them with opportunities, growth opportunities, like you talked about. Mentorship actually falls into the responsibility of a leader, and like it's number one. Like, I spend a lot of time talking to people. I get a lot of energy behind that, but at the end of the day, it's you want people to kind of see their path and continue to develop and be as the most productive member possible of our franchise, or if it's something else, that's fine too. So I try to keep in touch with people along the way that have made an impact on me, and make sure that they know that I'm very thankful for the folks that have helped me. But at the same time, like, I've got to pay it forward by helping young people, kind of see things clearly and get off on the right foot. And it's extremely energizing to do that and like see it actually come to fruition.
Brian, I know Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten and former chief operating officer of the Vikings, has been a great mentor of yours over the years, and I can understand why. He's a terrific individual.
Yeah, Kevin is. I mean, I'm sure many people watching will have heard him speak or have some interaction with him in the past, but he's just magnetic, and really means well and looking out for people and understands at the core like why we do what we do. Was great at firing people up on whether it's engaging with fans or building a stadium or whatever it may be. He's an outstanding leader, and certainly miss seeing him day to day, but we do stay in contact, and he's just a great person to check in with on occasion, and he's going to continue to do great things in his career. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Brian, COVID-19 has changed the world. It certainly has had a tremendous impact on the world of sports. How has that changed the way that you've engaged fans? Because clearly you don't have the touch points, at least in the stadium, that you had previously.
Yeah, I think. This could be a 10-minute answer here, right? I mean, what a year. We had to really adapt and didn't necessarily know what each day was going to bring. I'll give it a little bit of credit. Like the NFL, I mean, we got all the games in, we had the whole season, the Super Bowl happened. Like, I mean, is there anything else that happened like kind of as scheduled? So kudos to all the folks at the league level and what they were able to pull off. But for us, it was, you had to kind of keep in mind that, health and safety is the number one priority. Winning football games too, obviously, but health and safety is the number one priority. And so you really had to like factor that in. And, we had a limited access to players, limited access to the facility, and lots of things that ended up having to change how we did business. But, across the world, whether it's doing a zillion Zoom calls and doing all that stuff, like it really showed like the opportunity that was there to engage with people through their devices, whether that be their smartphone or their computer or whatever. We already had like really good engagement and a lot of, I guess, what you would call popularity as far as like what we would do from a content standpoint, but it opened up the doors to a whole new level of, coinciding with live game action and doing something on a second screen, finding and being creative to find ways to bring people into the building when we weren't going to have fans, whether that be through the pregame all access show or through a pregame warm up, video screen or, whatever it may be. It was really interesting, and it showed us that there is space to do something alongside a live event on digital, even when you have a full stadium. So there's things that we learned from this year that we're going to continue to do. But it really caused a lot of innovation and adapting very quickly. Draft day, like we did a little happy hour alongside of it and had some Vikings legends such as Jared Allen and Nate Burleson come in. And I mean, it was really cool. And, we just kind of learned as we went, but lots of positive reviews as we went. And we look forward to continuing those learnings moving forward.
Brian, you talked about Zoom, and Patrick and I have talked about this as well, is that you can get zoomed out pretty quickly having so many meetings, and we all had to adapt to that scenario. But today there are so many more media platforms and a new way to connect with fans, and there always seems to be something new popping up. Of course, there's Facebook and there's Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat. How do you determine, in your mind with your team, what are the best ones to use, and how do you use those effectively?
Well, it's a great question. To give you a little bit of background, whether or not we participate on a specific platform or not is largely determined by the NFL. So we strategize together on what platforms we should, step into and take a foray from, because it does impact all 32 teams, in addition to the league platforms itself. And I don't say that in a restrictive way. It's more of just, it's a cautious approach to make sure we're ready, right? You shouldn't jump in and get involved on a social platform without a strategy, without a goal. What's the best way to engage it? Fans want to consume content in the spot that they're at. So they're going to want to consume it in their way on whatever platform it is. And we have to really understand how to deliver that to them in that space. So it's kind of a guardrail that's put up to prevent teams from jumping into something without, having a true goal and strategy in mind. So very cautious approach. And I'll give you an example, like TikTok. We weren't really, I guess, allowed, for lack of a better word, we weren't really allowed to participate in TikTok until September of 2019. And so that's right at the cusp of the season there. So we didn't really have a great chance to put together a great strategy towards that, but we did participate in it in a very confined way. And then we were able to put a solid strategy towards it in 2020 and really grow it. And we're proud of where we're at, and we have some exciting plans for 2021. But it is a very strategic and measured approach. And like I said before, like if you don't have a really good plan to engage with your fans and communicate with them, you're kind of getting the, I guess, cart ahead of the horse if you step in there.
One other thing on that, when you started in the business, as you said, at the Division II level, and then you went to NASCAR and you were with the Jaguars and the Pirates, etc. I bet you never thought that you'd have these kind of platforms to work with, and where we're at now and where it's going to go 2 years from now, 2 days from now, nobody knows. So I can imagine for you in your position, you shake your head some days and goes, I cannot believe where we're at with social media.
Absolutely. And just to that point right there, I mean, to think that you can even look 5 years ahead and predict or plan it's tough. You can't do that. I mean, you guys will appreciate this. So back in this, on the sales side of things, when I was in Pittsburgh, they were getting ready to open PNC Park. Like I said, I was on the sales side. I mean, I remember like the grassroots stuff where you would go outside the stadium and get these little like cards with an image of what the stadium would look like and try to get people to mail those back in so you'd have a lead that then you could follow up on and potentially sell a season ticket to. I mean, today, all of that stuff happens in about 2 seconds by sending an email or, reaching to them on soul. I mean, just it's changing so rapidly, and really seeing that on the content consumption side of things too, man. It's fun. It's fun to like look at it. We have to produce this a different way. We have to shoot it a different way. We have to stand out, and be a true representation of our brand. And it's cluttered. It's cluttered out there. I mean, we're fighting. It's not like we're not in competition with the Philadelphia Eagles or the Denver Broncos or anything like that. We're in competition with, Sally Joe's Instagram account and, all this stuff. Like we've got to stand out with some really good stuff. So who knows what it's going to look like in 5 years.
Brian, part of your job is to be a cheerleader for the team, right? It's to generate interest and enthusiasm, get fans excited. But how important is it to be real in communicating with fans and acknowledging when the team isn't playing well?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I'm actually glad you asked it, because I get that question a lot. Like how hard is it to decide what you're going to cover or report on, related to whether it's the games or just happenings in the Vikings organization. And we do cover the team, right? There is a space for that, and we do cover the team, but we are the team. So we're going to take that approach of, this is how we're looking at it and how we're going to try to get better. And in periods of lean times, I guess you would say, I mean, it's very information based, rely on the information, go to the information. It's there, it's available, and really hammer that home. Whether or not, they should play this type of defense or that type of defense, that's not our competitive advantage. Like the reporters, that's what they do. Like they're going to report that the best, and that space is for them to do. Like we're going to focus on just the facts and then the information that's out there that supports the game, and then really focusing on our competitive advantage, which is the access and telling the stories and so forth. And even in the lean years, there are still stories to tell, and we'll tell those stories.
Brian, every fan these days, especially the younger generation, have some sort of second device game, or they're watching on. Can you tell me how the Vikings use these screens to connect with these fans? And I have to believe the majority of the demographics of those fans are 13 to 30-year-olds, maybe not like Patrick and Bill, who are only 31 years old. But how do you do that, and how do you measure that?
Well, again, another good question. Like we're continuing our dive into analyzing data and figuring that out and doing the right strategy. The places that we participate right now are Twitter and Instagram, and then through our own mobile app. We know that there's quite a bit of engagement on our own mobile app. We have our own connected TV app called Vikings Now, which is available on Roku, Apple TV, Fire, all those sorts. So we're programming, like we don't own the space within the game itself as far as footage is concerned. That's the NFL. So there's limitations that we have to kind of follow from like a social media policy and so forth, and along with our network partners. So we just focus on supplementing the game itself. And again, providing that information. It's in the special case of Twitter and Instagram, it's going to be very visual. We've got, a very robust photo capturing platform where we can turn this stuff around, almost instantaneously, because we know that very few fans are watching the game without any other device nearby. And typically it's the smartphone. In some cases, maybe it's an iPad or another device that maybe they're following fantasy football. But it's to learn who it is in each of these platforms, and then creating and giving them the content that they expect in that place. So it becomes more and more segmented. But if you have a good strategy and distribution plan around the specific platforms that people are engaging on, that's where you can get really smart and provide them what they want. I think we do a really good job of that. That's one of those spaces I think we're maybe leaders in that space. And we'll continue to develop that area moving forward, especially now coming out of COVID, where the acceleration from being, say, event centric to content centric has really taken place in 2020, really accelerated.
Well, let's talk a little bit about game presentation, which is another significant part of your job.
Yeah.
Game presentation changed last season.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you did from a game presentation perspective when there were no fans in the stands last year, but you had to create an environment that was somewhat exciting for the players and the coaches, so they didn't feel like they were playing football in a studio.
Yeah. Another great question, and we spent a lot of time on that, and it was one of the bigger challenges. You can't replace 66,000 fans, and and we never thought that we could, by the way. But like you said, how do we make it the best possible environment for our players? So, essentially we looked at the audio component in the building, which was, kind of dictated by the league. Here's the rules around it, say from an ambient noise standpoint. So the league really drove, here's what you can do from an ambient noise standpoint. And then that changed over the first couple of weeks of the season. The first game, our opener against Green Bay, it was like you were in a library. It was very quiet, but we were kind of following the rules as far as what was permitted. Luckily, the problem that we had was the same problem that everybody in the league had, so that we were able to pivot and kind of change those audio restrictions, which allowed us to essentially operate as normal from that point forward, with a baseline ambient audio track that essentially populated the field, so that if you were down in the field, it sounded like people were, just conversing in the stands at a just base level. And then we could go over the top of that with the normal stuff. So really from that second home game on, everything that we did was just as we would have done if there were people in the building. And that gave the players, kind of that feeling of, all the routines that they would typically go to were the same, except for that there were no fans. So, we were able to bring some of their families into it virtually. So for pregame warmups, there would be like a screen where, players could like wave at their family or whatever, just some of those things that would again, make it feel like a little bit more normal, a little bit more expectation and so forth. We had some fans and families, kids, the whole forth, like take videos of the skull chant, like them doing their skull chant at home or whatever it may be. And we would put that into like a montage type situation, and then use that where we would normally use it, coming out of a timeout or right before kickoff or right before the end of halftime. So just little things like that we could do. Still did all the videos, still did player intros, still had what the permissible amount of pyro. So tried to keep it as normal as possible and let it go from there.
Brian, we're coming close to the end, and we could spend hours with you on all topics. But I know in 2016, the Vikings created the skull chant, which became a fan tradition and something that everyone looked forward to either seeing on television or being in the stadium. It was so impressive. And then you had the drum line as well. How did those develop?
Yeah, so skull chant, great question. Really when the Icelandic national team got into the Euros in 2016, and they shocked the world by beating England in I think the quarterfinals, and then eventually lost to France, I think, in the semis. That was something called the Viking war chant that they did, and it went viral. There was 100,000 people in the square in Reykjavik, and it was intimidating and awesome. And immediately, because it went viral and it was called the Viking war chant, we had dozens, if not probably even more than 100 fans reach out and say, we've got to do this. We've got to do this. And of course, timing was perfect, because we're rolling into US Bank Stadium, where it truly is a set the tone moment. Like, nobody knows what to expect. They expect it's going to be great, but that's it. They don't know. They've never been there before. So the timing was just perfect. And so we didn't want to like rip it off. So we actually worked with the Icelandic national team, their captain, and some other folks over in Iceland, and officially got it, borrowed it from them, and then we kind of tweaked it a little bit, and where they would typically do the we replaced that with skull and kind of did the clap thing with that. So it took off, and it was great. We launched it the right way. The fans love it. It's good for engaging youth as well. We made our playoff run in 2017. It got even more important. And so I tell you, one of the things I really look forward to is when we get back into that building and we can do that first goal chant, because it's going to send chills.
Brian, we've got about a minute left. So before I let you go, I want to hear a story that maybe nobody's heard before. Give us something behind the scenes
Sure.
from the Vikings organization.
Yeah, I think really behind the scenes, folks, there's so many people that work so hard, that never get heard of, never known, like from the equipment managers, and Dennis Ryan and his crew and all that stuff. There's so many hours and so much work and focus and dedication that put into it to make that experience as best as possible for our fans. And so there's a lot of stuff behind that. I know people probably are generally aware, but it's an important story to tell. But the real quick one is the horn, the Galler horn. The original Galler horn was created by a guy named Todd Johnson. We call him TJ. Handcrafted horn that he's built in his garage, and pulled his car outside so he had room in the garage to create it. And he works for a music company in town, so he has a horn playing experience. And this guy, no one knows who he is. And he's there every game to make sure everything goes off right. And is just the hardest working dude that nobody knows, and was a big part of one of the biggest traditions that we have. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that's out there.
Oh, terrific. Well, Bill Robertson, thank you as always. My co-host on every show of Behind the Game. Bryan Harper, Vice President of Content and Production for the Minnesota Vikings and a longtime friend. We're honored that you're on Behind the Game today.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you watching. Look forward to seeing you next month on Behind the Game.